episode 8 of In Deep with Dan. I welcome all you returning listeners as well as the new listeners that I noticed have joined the show. That's great. You are now officially Deeplies. Yep, you can now call yourselves that. I can't tell you specifically who you are, but I can see the increase in show downloads, and I'm loving that. So, on a prior episode, I gave a shout out to my new international listeners, but I'm not going to ignore my fellow Americans. So, aside from the immediate friend group in Milwaukee, Madison, and Chicago areas, I see new Deeplies in, let's see, here we go, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Green Bay, Washington, D.C., Boston, Manchester, Baltimore, San Angelo, New York, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Philly, St. Paul, San Francisco, Oakland, pause for breath, San Jose, Rockford, Anchorage, Iowa City, Denver, Dallas-Fort Worth area, Cincinnati, Wilmington, Sioux Falls, Traverse City, Las Vegas, Richmond, Raleigh-Durham, Orlando, Rochester. Yeah, all right, I'm out of breath, but wow, very, very cool. So thank you for being here. If this is a one-off that you're here and you found the show by searching for the subject matter in your podcast app or online, please help me out by subscribing to the show if you've not done so already. I'll slide into your phone, your car, your skull every Monday morning. I'm just happy you found your way here. So check out the backlog of prior episodes. Shoot me an email or a message via the contact button available at indeepwithdan.com at the top of the page. And yeah, thanks for doing that. Before we get to today's conversation, some administrative business. I got great comments from last week's listener feedback episode. It also got a bunch of downloads right away, so I'm curious, were you drawn to the shortened format? Did you like having more of me on, in a concentrated form? Were the tech tips of use? Was the relationship advice interesting? Please send me some comments, and I'll do more of the things you enjoy, because I enjoy it all, so I might as well be saying what you want me to be saying, and you should be hearing what you want to be hearing. Dig it? All right, what else happened? I finally got to watch the season premiere of Black Lightning, which I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, so kind of back on track with my TV viewing, although it is still very low. I don't really have much time to watch the TVs, but I like it. My new gaming laptop that I bought for this show's production is insanely cool. I love it. I've gamed a few minutes on it to check it out, and I'm very pleased. For you nerds, it utilizes its onboard Intel video when it's not just doing the low-end webby stuff, and then kicks in its NVIDIA 1050 Ti when it needs the horsepower. So it's not a new generation NVIDIA graphics system by any means, but it gets the job done for me. It crushes audio production and video production, and that makes me happy. This past weekend, the wife and daughter and I went out and performed errands. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but it was great to interact with them, have a good time. On Saturday, I bought a wall mount for our old 47-inch, 54-pound 1080p TV. Got the mount for $7 from Menard's home store. Yeah, $7. It has a swing arm. It supports up to 75 pounds. So between the sale and the rebate, got it for $7. $7. Very exciting. So many things are exciting. I tend to end, oh, exciting, at the end of sentences. That's what I do. Sunday, we went and saw my college daughters and had fun reconnecting with them. It had been a couple of weeks since we'd seen them. Every time I see them, I realize how quiet and structured it has gotten around the home. And I miss them even more. So that was a good time. Did I mention who I have on the show today? I'm not sure I did at the top. Joel Sherfinski is on the show this week. I've known Joel for about, a little over 11 years. We used to work together. Then we didn't. We talk about that a little bit, the impact that place that we used to work had on both of us. So pretty compelling stuff. It's emotional. We got put through the ringer there, as did many other people, and it chewed us up a little bit inside, but I think it made us stronger, certainly more full of resolve. So check that out. We also talk about video gaming and podcasting. Joel has been podcasting for over 10 years, and he brings a lot to the table. I very much enjoy listening to his work, and it's cool to have him on the show. He goes by 5-Spot Joel out there on the interwebs. I will post some links and stuff in the show notes in your little app that you have there, so check those out. And here's our chat. So let's see, I'm trying to think now. Probably the last time you and I were together was at the old company where we both worked. And
I think so.
I left there in 2011. You were still there for a while after I left, right?
Yeah, I suffered for another 2 years.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't get out of prison at the same time, but life on the outside was hard to adjust to, It was different, things that happen on the inside, terrible memories. We don't talk about them.
No.
Yeah. You are one of the reasons I got into podcasting. You inspired me. You were podcasting at the time. I think you were doing PS Nation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And was that your first podcast?
No, it was actually my second. I started on a podcast called 360 Nation. How creative, right before that.
Nice. I wonder what that was about. Oh, it was about circles. Yeah, and the power of geometry. Nice. Yeah, that was a good show. And, of course, now you're doing ABOG or a Band of Gamers, or you dropped a Band of Gamers and it's now just ABOG.
Well, it's a Band of Gamers, but we use the acronym, which started because our logo had ABOG in it.
Gotcha.
It just kind of became synonymous with the listeners.
Sure. And it's also like, in American Werewolf in London, you stick to the road and don't go into the moors or the bogs. If
That's
there's
right.
an element of danger,
That's right.
Yeah, cool.
We started with Band of Gamers, but the acronym just was not cool. BOG. BOG.
Right. Yeah.
And the website was like $1,500. So we're like, could be the Band of Gamers, or we could be a Band of Gamers.
Yeah.
Voila.
And it's like a band of merry men.
Totally.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Of course, that would have been like a BAM. Yeah, I like a bog better. It's nice. Or ABM, I guess that would have been, right? A band of ABO BM. I don't know.
Where were you in 2012? We could have went with a Band of Merry Men.
And you could have had lute music as your theme. That would have been all right. Do you own a lute?
No,
No.
I don't.
No.
I have a ukulele. I play that as often as I would play a lute.
Yeah, I have a mandolin. I've played it once because I don't know violin tuning, and I didn't know how to. I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the attention span. It looks pretty though. It's a nice piece of art.
Great instruments.
Oh yeah. Well, because I'm always thinking of like going to California, Zeppelin, and it's just like, oh yeah, that sounds so cool.
It's never too late to be a rock star.
No, especially in this darn day and age when you can just do anything you want. So let me talk up the Joel. All right, so I'm going to do that.
Good, nice and awkward over here. Wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to remember. Cut to 3 years ago, maybe 4, and I thought, hey, I want to make a podcast. And my incentive for that was I just wanted to do something creative, and I had gotten to the point where I want to do something. And then I didn't do it, except what I did do is buy a lot of equipment and made a lot of plans, and then didn't do anything. Didn't clean the office out, which we were using basically as a storeroom. And then, life kept happening. And of course, I listened to podcasts a lot. But then I threw on your show, had a blast with it. I love what you had done with the format, you and your compadres, of having 3 things you like, sort of officially 2, but basically 3. So you get the gaming and the music as the official 2, but then the bridge of the beer drinking, which I do consider a bridge. Because you'll have a sip of beer and then kind of go into the next thing. You'll talk about the beer after the gaming usually, or how does that go? Usually at the beginning, you kind of announce what you're drinking at the time, and then you have the game. I mean, it's not set in stone, but you talk about the games, and then somebody basically says, "Here's my beer of the week."
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
we do two sides. We've got 2 segments on the show: video games to start it off, and then we do some music at the end. But in between, I don't know how it started or when it started, but I do know it just sort of grew into a thing because listeners were like, "Hey, I like that you shared what beers you were drinking. Why don't you do that again?" So we just kept doing it.
Yeah, and it hooked me because I mean, it was before you were streaming on YouTube, but it was when I was doing a lot of work in my office in between the boxes. And I would have a beer, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of having a beer with these guys. So it almost seemed interactive. And then, of course, I have 2 monitors on my PC, so I'd have my work going, and then one of you would review a game or a beer or an album, and I'd go over and I'd check out the album that you were talking about. Or now, of course, I didn't have Spotify subscription at the time, but I do now. So I would go out, and even now what I do on my commute is you'll talk about an album, and then I'll pause you guys, and I'll basically do kind of what on your other show you do, where you would intersperse a song or an outtake of whatever you were talking about. So I literally do that in my car on Spotify, maybe listen to a song or two because my commute is so long. And then I go back to your show where you're talking about it, and it's great. It's almost like having like an interactive Blu-ray where you're excited about something, and that's certainly what your Spotify playlist acts as well, in your notes. So I just think it's great.
I like that. We used to play music on the show, and we would get, since we play mostly independent, a lot of local music, we'd get permission, but it gets hairy really when it comes to copyright, and especially trying to get your podcast and all these services like Spotify. Oftentimes, even though you have permission, they'll still yank you down and say, you don't have permission, and then you have to prove it, which is time consuming, and then the show's not available for everybody. But I think that's awesome that you cut over to the music. I hope everybody does that.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know if, I'm sure it's an overused term, but tech savvy people understand that. And if they at all care about looking at show notes and they see a link, and they can understand that while, it won't cut off their audio, even on an iPhone, which used to be very single tasking, but now it handles keeping the audio going just fine as you're web browsing. I mean, that's been true for 2 or 3 years now. So they can actually read the show notes. They can hit the link. They can hit the link for the playlist while you're talking. And then as soon as they play the song, it pauses the podcast. They listen to the song, find their way back, and keep going. And it's great. So, I mean, I can even do it at a stoplight, not moving, and go from there. But yeah, anyway, you're very inspirational, and I thought, if this son of a bitch can do it, why can't I?
That's right.
Yeah.
If that's not an ego boost, I don't know what is.
I mean, this guy is so creative. He can do it. That is such an inspiration for a knucklehead like myself to do it.
Hey, podcasting that's one of the great things about it, right? Because it really is just a guy with a mic or a couple guys with a microphone. And I think it's all about being yourself, being interesting. Hopefully the content is there. But then just do it. Just do it. You bought a whole room full of equipment. And I bet you now that you're a few episodes in, I bet you wish you would have just started all those 2 years ago or whatever when you bought everything.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, well, I mean, it's like sex. It's like, man, I didn't know it'd be this easy and this fulfilling all at the same time. Just like sex, I had to learn 1 to 3 moves for podcasting, and I'm good to go. Now my episodes are a little bit longer in podcasting, but I don't know where to go after that joke.
Cornered yourself on that.
Yeah, I did. And when I corner myself, then that breaks the mood.
I knew it.
Yeah, you knew it was
softball.
Coming. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Ooh, good one. No. But I was going down the road of, oh yeah. So I'm sorry, I probably just blew out your levels. Oh yeah.
No.
Sound like Chris Curran.
Oh yeah. All right.
All right, woo! Wow, I've never done that. Ooh, it kind of cleared me out.
He's a good producer, though, that guy. I don't know how he does that. He yells and the levels stay the same.
Yeah, well, he's compressing the bejesus out of that. You know, he's got to be trimming the peaks, compressing the shit out of it, and then amplifying it up probably to around -4.
And here I just thought he was like some sort of wizard with a large mixer, just constantly up and down on the sliders.
Yeah, anticipating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even the filters for Audacity have predictive look ahead, is what they call it for that stuff. So it will look ahead to the nearest peak and then compress based on what's coming, which is kind of cool. And then you can set the look ahead. That's what that look ahead value means.
I really got to use those tools.
Yeah, it's cool. But I mean, to your point, you know, that I should have done it sooner. Now that I'm at episode 8, I realize that I overproduced the heck out of the first 2 or 3 episodes, and it did nothing to improve them that was noticeable to anyone. So the last couple that I produced, all I did was I got better on the mixer, and I had been misunderstanding. I was way too hot recording the first couple of episodes. I was recording up to -6. Now I record up to -15 or -12, and that leaves me plenty of headroom to do what I need to do afterward. So, yeah, I had no idea. Now, and, you know, I had done that recipe book document basically for Audacity. It's like, okay, if I do, first I compress, and then, first I do noise reduction, then I compress. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I should noise gate it, then compress it, then noise reduce it, and then maybe run it through the limiter. You know, all of this stuff. I was trying to come up with a witch's brew of it's always going to work. Mm-hmm. And what I found out is, nope, just listen to it and go, because now my ear is trained. And I can go, well, wait a minute. I've got too much, you know, top end on the second track, or I've got some noise from somebody's air vent coming in. I'll noise gate that out and I'm done. And then I compress it and then I juice it up. You know, I normalize it and I cut and print and off I go. So
I think it's a common mistake too when you first start editing a podcast, and it's based with your ambition level. You want it to be just absolutely perfect. And it's true that we've got on my podcast, we're 175 episodes in, and darn it if when people find us, they don't go back to episode 1, which I kind of dislike. Like, can you start at like 160? So I think we've gotten better over time. But I remember the first year or so editing, we'd do a 2-hour podcast, and I swear I'd edit for like 10 to 12 hours, those episodes. And
sure.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And you edit or I would edit so tight that I'd be taking like breaths of air out. That's how anal I was about it. And as a matter of fact, I've learned, and there's a podcast locally here, I won't name it, but I'm rather fond of their content and fond of the guys on the show. But they do the same thing. They edit out breaths. Mm-hmm. So when the people are talking, it's just like da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. You never hear anybody breathe.
Yeah, I did that for the first few.
Little bit of a producer hat. I didn't notice it with yours, but with theirs, I can't listen to it.
Oh,
it sounds
too much.
So unnatural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned too. All I do is I compress essentially that stuff down so it can still be heard, but it's not, that.
Yeah.
It's more, I don't know if you could even hear that. I bet you could, but I was back a bit.
Well, even listening to like the best radio guys, you hear their breaths of air, but you never think about it.
No.
Now that I mention it, listeners might listen to something and be like, "Oh yeah, I hear him breathing." It's just not something. It's normal. It's how we talk.
Yeah.
You don't think about it. It's always there. But when you take it away, wow, it sounds awkward. Yeah. I can't handle it.
It's not only unnatural, it's actually, I think, positive to have it because it often shows that there's, you haven't been abandoned. And it can convey, depending on where the breath is, emotion or thoughtfulness or something. Because if you're like, well, I don't know, that is kind of a drawing in of, it means something. So you're 100% right. And I've noticed it. It's funny too, because you're saying, people probably don't notice it a lot. Now, because I do this, I notice it all the time and I don't care. But I was listening to an NPR, one of the zillion podcasts they have. And of course I was listening to it since they're number one for everything in downloads. But the woman who was doing that podcast was breathing all the time. I don't know if she had a cold or whatever, but it was all over the place. And I know I would not have noticed that, 3 months ago or 2 months ago. It wouldn't have crossed my mind. But if you watch 100 hours of YouTube on how to do podcasting and listen to 1,000 hours of how to podcast, of course it's going to get through, just like in any specialty. Like I'm sure video producers go crazy watching TV shows and going, oh, the lighting, oh my God, I can't believe, in Arrow they used this green filter or whatever over here. It doesn't make sense. And I know nothing about that stuff. I'm ignorant to it. I'm just enjoying the show. Yeah,
it becomes sort of a curse. You produce a podcast for a while, and you listen to other shows. They have to sound really, really good in addition to being entertaining and having good content. I could find the most entertaining and great content. If it's recorded poorly or produced poorly, I turn it off. Can't make it but a few minutes. Like, nope, can't do it.
Yep, and I do that with Escape Pod, and I hesitate to mention it, but I love that podcast. I've listened to it since 2005 or whenever. So long ago, it was on my Zune. But
nice.
Yeah,
I had one of those. Yeah. Fantastic piece of tech.
Actually, we compared Zunes one day at work in 2007 because I think you walked by. That might have been one of our first non-work related conversations, and I had my Zune out. And you said, "You've got a Zune?" And I said, "I do." And you went and grabbed yours, and we're looking at them. And I think I don't know if they had 2 models. I don't know. But they were essentially the same. I love that thing. I don't know what happened to it. It's one of the weird... I'm very anal about where my stuff is. I almost always know where everything is. And that thing just disappeared. I'm sure somebody ripped it off or something. Because it never showed up anywhere. But I digress. But I was listening to... Escape Pod is a science fiction podcast. I'm a huge science fiction fan. And their audio quality varies wildly. And they'll have audio talent submit stories. Sometimes the hosts or the people who work at Podcastle Productions will cycle through and read a story. Other times they'll just get someone who, voice talent from home who probably has equipment like ours. And sometimes it's so terrible or it's so compressed where it's almost robotic, like they just shaved it way down. So everything is the same level and everything is edited out. And I turn those off within, 30 seconds into the story. Or they're trying to be creative sometimes and use robot voices or something that more of like a radio show. An old-timey radio show, but it doesn't always work. So the content is great. If there's an episode with a super good story and something I just can't listen to, I turn it off. But if there's a mediocre story that's good for a drive and the recording quality is amazing, then I'll listen to it. So it's kind of inverse to what one would think. I'm not going to grin and bear it.
Well, that's the thing, right? The longer I've done this, the more I want it to be simple and the edit to be easy. I'd rather spend time on the content, maybe the web posts and the marketing, the social media, than the time I take to edit it. So I've got pretty much a live mix going for my show now. I record my 2 co-hosts. One's in Vancouver. Another one is in England. So we connect at early afternoon time so all of us can time zone wise make it work. And then just record it live, edit out bad content, edit out dramatic pauses, for which we have a lot.
Yeah.
And then go.
Sorry, I was taking a drink of tea, which I'm sure your English friend would enjoy, because I can stereotype him.
Yeah,
because
all
it's
English
always
people
allowed.
like tea.
Yeah. At least the tea bag. Because that's the best part.
Little video game reference too, which I appreciate.
Sure, and that's how I meant it, Joel. I wouldn't mean it in any other way.
There you go.
That was one of my major attractions, not just in general, but to video gaming, was when I would...
Teabagging? Is that it?
Absolutely. I'd play the ancient Ghost Recon on PC in 2001, or even prior to that, Rainbow Six in the late 90s with my brother-in-law. And, oh yeah, there would always be a 15 to 20 second just dead spot when you got killed and you were forced to just lie there and look through your dead eyes. And that's when we'd come up to the other one and give him the old tea bag. Numerous times, up and down, up and down. And I'm like, this is a sport I can handle. I'm sitting in a chair. I'm laughing my ass off. And to this day, games that still allow it, it's just an homage. It's a callback.
Yeah. It still happens. I used to play video games late till the evening, right up until I went to bed. And I'd be online playing some Halo multiplayer or something. And I'd fall asleep. And I'd wake up, and then my corpse would be laying there, and there'd be about 5 guys teabagging me. And they're just laughing hysterically, like they're having it's almost like being at a party and the drunk guys get marker on his face,
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I no longer fall asleep with the controller. I put it down, actually go to bed. But yeah, many a times I woke up to lewd positions from other men. Yeah. It's bad.
The only time I still fall asleep video gaming is on the 3DS. For some reason, if I'm just super tired, but if I'm in one of my obsessive phases with a game, whether it was Animal Crossing or Zelda or something, all of a sudden I'd find that I'd momentarily fall asleep for, 5-10 seconds. But that's all it takes to be halfway across a map or in a dungeon or something. I'm like, what the hell did I do? And it's jarring because it was such a part of the waking world for the last 2 hours. And then I'm sure when I fell asleep, I was dreaming about the game a little bit, hallucinating about the game. And then you wake up and terror strikes. It's like, what happened to my inventory or whatever. But that's part of it too, I guess.
As a matter of fact, the other night I fell asleep playing the new Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you could kill a horse in that game, but I learned that the hard way. I dozed off. A stagecoach comes crashing down the road. My horse hits it. I woke up just as the horse hit it because on the screen it's like you hear the audio. It's just like, ah! The horse goes flying off. The stagecoach tips over. Their horses go flying. By the time I figure out what's up, I stand up. I go check out my horse. It's dead. It's laying there dead. Yeah. Yeah. Told the wife, and of course she got very offended. You killed a horse? She's like, wow. I have a hard time playing video games around her because if you need to skin an animal as part of the game, it's just not happening. She's like, don't you dare kill that wolf. I'm watching you. It's a game. Calm down.
Yeah. But, they have feelings too. No, it's not all dark mirror. They don't. Not yet.
Killed my second horse last night, and she called me an asshole. Walked out like it's an accident. I like horses.
Yeah, I wouldn't kill a real horse. Just like I wouldn't kill all these, bandits. Well, maybe I would, but probably I don't know. If they weren't banditing me, maybe not. Yeah, I think you could in the PS3 Red Dead Redemption game as well. I think you could. I think because what happened was I got I actually did the mission where you get the cool Palomino or whatever it was early on, and I did it, and I got the game because I have I bought it the game used, and then I bought the game guide, and it was just basically for the art, kind of like Game Informer, where it's like, oh, this is so beautiful in here. I don't even really care if I read it because they didn't have a lot of cheats. They just had, it was more like a walkthrough guide.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay. And they were warning, they said, make sure to get that horse or you're going to have just a garbage horse for 3 days until you figure out how to get a better horse or get enough money to buy one or whatever. So I was like really invested with this horse. And I was having a good old time just wandering around open world with my horse. And I got off to get some, flowers or ginseng or whatever the hell was out there. And a mountain lion came out of nowhere and started just tearing me up. So I'm screaming and I'm just I'm just flailing aimlessly trying to kill this thing. And I turn around, I just shoot my horse. And it was, the good horse. And I managed to have enough presence of mind to just abort out of the game and go back in. So I would, because it was hard on the PS3 to, once your save point hit, you were done.
Yeah.
But I managed to, I don't know if I pulled the power out of the PS3 or what, and had it go through the recovery sequence. And I got back in where I had my last save point. But then I was too careful playing the game because I'm like, it became my whole mission was to save this horse, which was dumb because by then I had enough money I could have bought the same horse again at some other town. But yeah, I love Rockstar, man. I mean, they get you in there. They certainly got your wife.
Yeah.
Oh, so she must have loved you playing Far Cry 4 or Primal.
I can't play those games around her. It's like you.
Yeah,
go upstairs for a while. I gotta kill some foxes, and skin some wolves and stuff.
Honey badger.
Not gonna want to see this.
Wow, we went down video games. That's okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm taking your show down a very wrong path.
No,
here.
You're not. You're Joel. You're the legendary Joel Sherfinski, and I was not making that up. Yeah,
legend based on the amount of time I've been podcasting.
Absolutely, longevity.
Which also makes me insane, I think.
You know what you are? You're like the Law and Order of podcasting. You probably started at the same time or thereabouts back in the day.
Yeah, 2008, I think I started.
Yeah, so somewhere in there. They might have you by
Why
a couple
stop
years.
now? I'm a 44-year-old guy talking about video games, and the heck if I'm not going to shoot for 54.
That's right. Yeah.
Made it this far.
You bet. Okay, so your first podcast, we kind of went into that. So, Joel, in all those Law and Order years of podcasting, you must have some amazing stories of podcast lore or podcasts past. Maybe some interactions you've had with co-hosts, maybe guests, maybe technical difficulties. Does anything come to mind?
Well, I can share how I got started podcasting, if that works.
Oh, that works very much.
I started in 2008. I came to podcasting in a very weird way. Well, for starters, this is normal. I was a podcast listener. I got into podcast listening. I had pre-ordered the Xbox 360 video game console. I paid for it. I bought I pre-ordered 5 games, and then I had to wait a few months. And I could not get enough information about that system that I was going to be proudly playing in a few months. So I was reading everything I could on the internet. Then I discovered podcasts. I could listen to guys talk about the Xbox 360 and how great it's going to be before it's even out. So I discovered Major Nelson, who is he's still doing it to this day. He's an ex-radio guy, talks about Xbox. He works for Microsoft. And I started listening to his show, listened to all I could there. It was probably about an hour or two a week. Listened on my Zune, which was wonderful.
Yeah, baby.
Listened to that, and then I just started desiring more content, started to discover other podcasts. I figured, well, I've got the Xbox listening down. Why don't I try PlayStation? So I looked up PlayStation podcasts, found a couple, started listening, and then kind of stuck with one that I thought was one of the better PlayStation podcasts, and that was called PS Nation.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized after a month or two of listening that one of the co-hosts on that show lived in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Not far from here. Total small world moment. Like, wait a second. That's right down the road. So I reached out to him like, hey, I'm in Milwaukee. You're in Oshkosh. How cool is this? I discovered you on the wide, wide world of internet. You're right down the road. This is fabulous. So I kind of started to make friends with him, and started to meet other local podcasters in the video game world. There's quite a few of them here in Wisconsin. And met a guy in Chicago. He was doing 360 Nation. So eventually I joined a podcast about the Xbox 360. We just talk about that once a week. And actually a little bit of a story before that. I was in a band, actually. My band was I was in a brand new band. We're getting ready. I play guitar. We're getting ready to play our first gig. Had practiced for a few months, had about an hour set ready to go. And we started our first show, or we played our first show in my house, invited a bunch of friends over, played that gig. And then my thumb swelled up. So I got we thought I had tendonitis. So I was very accustomed to performing, playing gigs, being in a band, and I kind of liked that. It was my creative outlet. I liked having something to output to an audience.
Yeah.
But my thumb swelled up, and we figured, okay, it'll heal. Went to the doctor. They're like, yeah, you got tendonitis. We had to put the band on hold for a while so my thumb could heal, or the swelling could go down. And this lasted for ended up going on for a year or two.
Oh my God.
The thumb just never got better. I had to put the guitar down. I had to quit the band. I had to watch my band go on without me, which sucked. But they got a different guitar player, and, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm like, yep, go do it. Go without me. This
I
is
think
horrible,
that was happening when you and I met. I mean, it was back then, because I remember you having sadness about having to get rid of the guitar, and it was very recently, I thought.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was 2007,
yeah,
2008.
that was it. Yeah.
I had to, then I was told it's all the typing you do at work, it's all the video game playing, and it's all the guitar playing. So you should limit all of that. It's like, okay, well, at work, I can't really limit typing.
Yeah.
So I gave up guitar and video game playing so I could type at work so that I could heal. And I felt, it just, long story short, actually it's a little bit of a longer story yet, but I felt this gaping hole. Like I want to perform. I want to be in front of a crowd. I want to be creative, and I'm used to creating for other people. And that whole aspect of me was just taken away because of this thumb problem.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to look into podcasting. I sat in as a guest on that 360 Nation show, did one episode, and I felt that same exhilaration that I used to feel playing a gig. Because I'm sure you probably feel this too, Dan, when you're doing a podcast, you sort of think about the end result. You're thinking about talking to the listener, even though you're in a room by yourself.
Always, yeah.
Doing a podcast. So I felt that same sort of exhilaration, and that's how I got into podcasting. And then I stuck with it. I ended up having some health issues. I learned a long time later, a couple years later, that I had a heart attack, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
Just came out of heart surgery, and my wife's like, "How do you feel? How'd it go?" Just typical wife question, worried about her husband. I'm like, "They fixed my thumb, babe." And of course I'm all drugged up at this point. And my wife gives me this look like, "Honey, you just got out of heart surgery. Why are you talking about your thumb?"
Yeah.
Like, "Babe, they fixed my thumb." And the long story short here is that I had heart attack symptoms for years.
Oh my
and
God.
that swelling that I had in my left thumb was the blood. It's the widowmaker artery not allowing blood to properly flow down my arm to my hand.
Gosh.
So yeah,
Jeez.
it's very, very strange, but that's why my thumb swelled up. So my heart attack is sort of on the heart issue, sort of why I got into podcasting.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's amazing the butterfly effect, of that, which ultimately ended up good in, there's so many, and I mentioned this before on the show, there are so many paths one can take. Seems like you've taken one that's very fun for you. I mean, it's certainly fun to listen to you.
Yeah, I love it. I'm glad it's something I did to fill a hole at the time. But as soon as the thumb started working, and of course I was able to resume playing my guitar and everything.
Yeah.
I just stuck with it. And now I've been in and out of a couple bands since, whereas the podcast has always been a consistent. And I'm not sure. I'm considering starting another band, but I do not want the podcast to slack. I want to make sure I have time. And what's really cool about it too is the two friends I've made doing the podcast, doing by a band of gamers. It's almost like an excuse or essentially it is an excuse for me to hang out with my two best friends.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome.
Have you guys ever met up in person?
A little bit. So I've got a co-host in Vancouver, one in England, as I mentioned. I had a chance to meet in person the English fellow, the tea drinker, which was wonderful. He came to, I'm also involved heavily with this local gaming conference called Midwest Gaming Classic.
Oh, sure.
I've been doing that for a few years, and I coordinate the music on their stage.
Oh,
at
fun.
the event.
Wow.
So he came down this last April to be a part of that event, or to come and join us for that. So I had a chance to hang out with him in person. And he had such a good time. He's already planning on coming back next April. And then we're going to, after the Midwest Gaming Classic, hop a plane and together fly out to Vancouver.
Oh, excellent.
To meet Shane. So that'll be the first time all three of us are together in person.
Oh, that's great.
But when we record the podcast, we do it on video.
Sure.
So it's almost like being there. You get to see the guys. And of course, nothing beats actually being in the same room. This is what we keep telling Shane. Dude, you've got to do this. It's really cool. Like it was neat when I met him, because we were like old friends immediately. He hit it off just as we expected.
Sure, exactly. I have not had a weird experience actually meeting someone who I've had an online, relationship with for a long time. It's just, it's really no different if there is a voice and video involved. I mean, at least voice, because then it's like that moment of, okay, now I have to read their body language, but you already have that because you use Google Hangouts for your podcast. So at least you have that instantaneous, or nearly so, feedback.
I was a little worried going into that. Like, what if we just don't get along in person? What if he's a total, total insert bad word here? What if he's one of those guys? But
sure,
fortunately that didn't happen.
Putting on a show, or maybe his odor could have been terrible.
Right.
Now, there's one to go. You just don't know. Once you hit Vancouver,
there's still that chance.
Yeah. That's actually one of, my wife asked me not too long ago. That probably was a long time ago. I don't know. What she asked me where I would want to go, or maybe my daughter, if you could go anywhere, where would you go? One of those. I'm like, oh, Vancouver, definitely. And everybody's like, what? Why would you do that? And I'm like, that's where they filmed The Flash. They filmed Highlander. Half of the season would be in Vancouver. You got Arrow. All the Stargate. Going back, all of that stuff. So I'd be like, I'd just go on studio tours. They're like, yeah, maybe we'll be on a cruise in the Caribbean while you do that.
Yeah, that's the last time we ask you where we should all go, Dan.
Yeah, and let's go in the winter when production is ramping up. No, I don't know. I'm just making it up. That was an inspiring story about how you got into podcasting, definitely. And I love the happy ending that you got to play guitar again and game again.
Yeah, thank goodness for that, because you do two things pretty much your whole life, and then all of a sudden you can't do them anymore. It's a little bit depressing.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Nice to be able to resume those activities.
Yeah, it must have felt amazing. And the heart doing okay?
Yeah, heart's doing good. We've got 8 stents now.
Wow.
So I've had a couple more bouts. It's such a bad case of genetics. Yeah, it's a scary situation, but I sort of feel lucky that I went through it. Because talk about giving a proper perspective on life.
Yeah.
I used to care way too much about the career and career progression, making a lot of money. Then I got into a very stressful work situation, which, Dan, I know you can remember.
Oh, yeah.
Working at that same place. And that did contribute to my health issues. It was a very stressful environment. That, obviously, I have heart disease genetically. But I really think that work stress is what kind of put me over the edge. And then after that, I'm just like, you know what? Who cares? I almost just died. And
right.
to worry about a work situation as much as I did, this is dumb. So now to this day, I never really fret work, even though it can be stressful or it can take a lot of hours. It's always like, it's just a job.
Right.
I get to go home to my wife and my family and be happy. I'm not going to let work get in the way of that. So I feel like it's a great perspective. I'm glad I went through it, although it sucks and it's scary and you never know the future. But at least I live every day to the fullest.
Yeah, it's a great lesson that unfortunately most people have to learn themselves at some point, because myself, I was very focused on career, and, we had new kids, or we had just started having kids. We had a brand new mortgage. I'm like, okay, this is my job. I'm the main provider here. I've got to go hog wild on this thing. And I would internalize all the problems. In that situation you and I were in, I questioned myself, going, God, am I really this bad? Or is nobody can be as evil as this person who is affecting my life like this? I must have I certainly followed the money when I took the job, but I thought I oversold myself. And then luckily people like you and our co-managers were like, no, it's not you. It's not you. It's her. And then, we talked it over among ourselves and stuff. But after that job, I took a very low pay job. Actually, it was more than I had been dumbed down to at the job, because they tried to get me to leave where you and I were. And it took years to get back to a semblance of security, and just living from check to check, and who knew when if the house was going to go or whatever. But in that time I learned, what? I don't need to live every day in essentially heart attack zone where I couldn't sleep. I was waking up. I'd go to bed at, midnight working at that one job. And then I'd wake up at 2:30 in the morning and just start, open up 6 Excel sheets. And that would be what I did until I went to work and did the same thing. And, so I learned, okay, forget chasing the money. Just, work together as a couple, make sure the bills are paid. Make sure you have inexpensive hobbies. And to be quite honest, video gaming is not an expensive hobby. A lot of people look at it from the outside and say, well, man, a game is or at the time it was $50, but now it's 60, 70. It's like, yeah, but you get a lot of utility out of that. In a single night at a bar, if you're a person to go to a bar every night, would be $50 easy, depending, if you're buying a round or whatever. So it doesn't take long for a video game hobby to be a sustainable thing. Plus you can get some camaraderie and socialization out of it at the same time.
Yeah, most definitely. And I went through the exact same thing at first, thinking, all throughout my career, I've been told I'm really good at this.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, I'm being told I'm horrible at this.
Yeah.
But then after a while, I started to realize, and this was probably after the heart attack, I kept getting set up for failure. Go do this one way. Don't tell anybody I told you to do it this way.
Oh, God, yes.
I had
and then that so many times.
You follow the marching orders, and then somebody later would be like, why did you do it this way, you moron? Yeah. And then that, the boss would come in and say, I told him to do it the other way.
Yes. Oh, God, man.
At that point, I'm like, just forget it. It got so bad, Dan, that at work, and because I was dealing with this ongoing heart concern. So after I had the stress and the heart attack, you sort of relearn your body, because at this point you had a couple stents put in. I was on all sorts of medications, and I still take a few medications just to regulate, to keep the heart calm. You don't want to push that thing too much now, because it's not the same. It doesn't have the same strength it used to have. But then I'd go to work, and I'm trying to find the new me. And then that took a couple years. But as I'm transitioning, I go to that job, and this boss would just be demonstrative and setting me up to fail. And I'd get in these meetings with human resources and a VP and an executive, and they'd be like, sign this piece of paper that says you did all these things wrong.
That's what she did to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't do any of these things wrong, but it got so bad. I'd go to my doctor, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I had to take an antidepressant.
Hey, don't be embarrassed for that, man.
Just to get through my work day.
Yeah.
And then that backfired on me because the antidepressant, although it worked and I was numbed down to this mental state that could handle just about anything, she would go off on me about something and I would laugh in her face. And she'd be like, "Why are you laughing at me?" And I'm like,
I'm high, baby.
I don't know. You're funny, you know. And that it just didn't work out that well.
You've got 6 eyes. Yeah. Oh my God.
Eventually, and hindsight being 2020, I know my wife's like, you could sue her and you could go. I was on FMLA working through this horrible situation. The doctor was keen to what was going on because I was telling him all this crap I was dealing with at work.
Yeah.
He wrote a doctor's note that basically said, if you have heart issue at work, which I was in her office as she was being mean, you just walk out. And that's permissible. So
Nice.
he wrote whatever paperwork he wrote to the point where if she would start pulling her stuff, I could be like, well, I don't feel good. I'll see you tomorrow. And I could just walk right out the door. And there's nothing that she could do because I was protected under FMLA.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So she eventually offshored my department, offshored my position, got rid of my whole department as a means to get rid of me legally.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to hire my staff back.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I got like a 3-month severance and I was able to make a career change.
Yeah.
Do something a little less stressful. I don't want to be in, and I have not progressed back to middle management.
Yeah.
I just took the lesser role. It was about half the pay, which is kind of a bummer. But
right. Oh, yeah.
You have much more capacity for happiness and all these other things. Now, my career's progressed a little bit now where at least I'm pay-wise getting close to where I was before.
Oh, good.
But, no interest in getting into that middle management situation where you're getting kind of pulled from both directions. And I'm always worried. And that's another thing, too. How do you can't really explain that in a job interview because you sort of look like a fool, right? Like, hi, I would love to be a supervisor or a manager for you. But if you're a giant a-hole or if,
there's no way to know. There's no way to know ahead of time.
And just you can't say things like, I'm really good, but if you stress me out too much, I'm going to have a heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a huge appeal there.
No.
Although you do interview well, I think the whole threat that, things might go sideways could put a hiring manager off a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah. Now, I was able to tell my version of your story, which is not all that dissimilar except for the health issues, at my current job, years later and say, because right now, I mean, I'm a manager, but the environment is all very family focused. So they're like, you know what? If you have a thing that you have to do, just go do it. We will survive. You will figure it out. People get sick. So if you have a family thing or you have to go vote or you have to, they do not get in your way of any of that stuff. And it is night and day different. And as a manager, I'm trying to think, I was not a true manager again until this company that I'm working for now in 2013. So I had 2 years off of management and I was hesitant to go back. But when I interviewed a very small company at the time, now we're bigger, but they're like, hey, come on in. We're all a family. Everybody, not quite everybody, but I interviewed with, 6 to 8 people in a serial fashion all day long. And people who had nothing to do with my position, but the entire reason they were, peripherally with my position. But the reason they were talking to me was the company wanted to make sure I would fit into the culture. And I had a lot of respect for that. It was tiring because I kept repeating the same stuff over and over again, trying to make it sound fresh and new, but it paid off because we were sure about each other at the end of the day. And I still have, occasional conflicts, work conflicts, but not like vitriol, vindictive stuff. Totally different. So, but I was definitely gun shy for management. And after I left the company you and I worked at, I said, no, I don't want to do it. I'll be a consultant where I can judge other people's work and help them out and be a mentor, but I'm not going to have anything to do with how much money they make or performance reviews or settling disputes or anything like that. I just wanted to just do my job and go home. But now it's a magic mix again. So
sounds like a nice situation. If I could get into that ideal situation, I would love to be a leader again. It's just something I think that it's a natural skill set. I know they train people to be good managers, but some people just are good at project managing other people,
right?
Or helping other people with whatever they've got going on, or being supportive. And that's another thing too in today's culture. Not to be political, and hopefully this isn't political, but it just seems like there isn't an emphasis or an importance put on being a good person, a people leader. Yeah. It's all about processes and computers and getting more out of people, but just being like supportive, a good leader, helping them get through their day so that they produce a lot of widgets and go home happy and having good camaraderie and having a good atmosphere. Things that I think are my strength, they don't seem like a need in the workplace anymore. Now it's more like, we don't care about any of that. Just make sure they make 14 calls an hour, okay?
Yeah, that's unfortunate because now I've been, over 5 years at this company, and I feel like it's gotten, only because I'm looking through this narrow lens, Joel, where my experience is that it feels very holistic, totally different. And, but that all has come from the top down. So, as a manager, and I didn't have to be taught how to care for my team as people, but we'll talk, video games for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then we just go crazy with software testing for the next, 5 hours or whatever. And then if somebody takes a little bit longer lunch, they stay late to make up their time. And it's all just like, it's almost like, the Netherlands or something. Except, we're out in the boonies, so people can't actually be on bicycles.
Without all the rose fields, tulips. There are still good situations out there, yeah. Obviously. Personally for me, when I look for a position nowadays, I don't want to get in these large bureaucracies. I don't want to get in these giant companies where I'm one of 28 managers doing the same thing, because that's when they really start to make you fit these certain molds. So I look for smaller companies, family run, private, maybe medium company at the largest. It seems to those companies are more prone to having better cultures and more understanding situations. And that's the job I have now. I feel like, although my job is a little challenging and stressful from the amount of work I have to get done and the amount of time I have to do it, without working 60 to 70 hours a week, trying to stay within a reasonable time frame. At least they have fun. And that's the best thing about my job is it's my team. It's all the people. Even though we feel miserable sometimes, we just look at each other and start cracking up. Like, is this ridiculous or what? Just having fun. And I have a coworker who plays Nintendo Switch, and she comes in. She's like, "Did you play the new Mario?" I'm like, Let's talk. And this is what I needed today. Let's talk about Mario. Oh, good. So having those conversations, and it's the people, right?
Yep, exactly. And it is the workplace is a replacement social structure for a family and for a village. And, there are always going to be people you don't like or don't get along with or are that fond of, just like there will always be people who make you laugh and you're happy to be around, and as long as everybody is professional, which you and I did not have at that aforementioned job.
No.
Well, with the one person. Really it was, just a rotten apple in the barrel that tainted the whole barrel, because where I am now, it's just having fun with people. And, there are still, don't get me wrong, there are still milestones you have to meet and things that have to be done, but everybody really feels collaborative about it. And I happen to work in an industry where, people could get seriously screwed up or die if we make a mistake with what I do for a living. So people care about the end result and know that, hey, if I stay 10 more minutes, maybe it could change lives. And that is a bond-forming paradigm, really. You know,
you spend more hours at work than you do with your spouse at home. You know, so it's so important. And it's been great to reconnect with you, Dan. We've both gone through this crazy woman and that job, and it's just nice to talk to somebody else about that. It's hard to tell people the story and have anybody understand at all because it sounds so unreal.
Yeah, it does.
Like that didn't happen. You're just a dramatic person. No, that happened.
Yeah.
it was real. And we could start a Facebook group of all the people that went through that at that place with her, right? I mean, there's at least 5 or 6 people I can think of off the top of my head who've been through that.
Oh yeah, and I don't cry normally, but I mean, at those days I cried. I mean, just like on the way home from work, going,
Really?
"What?" No, not really, but it sounds good. It sounds like a good story.
Made for a good story, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll probably leave that in.
I used to think she'd get hit by lightning, and somehow she never did. Like she'd just walk out of the office one day and just, big crack of lightning would just take her out.
Nope. Sometimes Thanos wins.
Kept waiting for karma to, because you know what they say, it's the karma gets him in the end, and I won't share any specifics, but it did eventually catch up with her.
Yeah. Do you have fantasies sometimes of accidentally running into her out in the world and then just like doing the verbal smackdown?
All the time.
I do all the time too. I'm like, what if I come around the corner at the gas station and then I would say, you or whatever, you know. But
I haven't had like an unhealthy amount of fantasizing about what I would say.
I did back then. I did back in the day. I don't anymore.
I would relish in the opportunity to have a few words.
Yeah.
If I did run into her, I think what I would try to do mostly is just have a giant smile on my face and just make her realize that I am like doing super well.
You mentioned it was good to hook up with me again after so many years. And by the way, I get that all the time from people I run into. They're like, oh my God, Dan, it's so good to be with you again. So I appreciate that you're on top of it that way, Joel, and that you recognize that for what it is. However, I feel the exact same way about you, and you have been so helpful with this show, giving me advice. You know, people, I text Joel at the oddest hours, but he texts back almost immediately. I don't know if we're on the same biorhythms or whatever, but this morning I got up at 4 to work on some stuff for work. Came downstairs. I don't know what it was. I had an epiphany about something or something stupid. I texted you, and you texted me back. Like, I don't know how long. It was within immediately or 10 minutes or something. I'm like, what the hell are you doing up at 5? But it was funny. But I do appreciate it. And yeah, man, you're cool. We should meet in real life someday, in RL sometime.
Yeah, we still have to have that beer. We really do. Well,
we will do it. I'll probably be waiting for you in Vancouver when you get off the plane. I can be Yoko. I can be your Yoko when you meet up with the rest of the band.
They would appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know how she went over great with the other bandmates.
Oh, yeah, all the time. You know, I'm going to learn the lyrics to Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. And that was our talk. How about that voice, huh? Joel's voice? Yeah, it's got that deep, hey, how's it going? Hey, everybody. And it's not affected. It's his true voice. Good stuff. Check out the show notes in your little phone app or your tablet app or even on the web. However you listen and consume this content, check it out. See how cool you are now, my Deeplies. You can now use terms like consume the content. So consume it up. A shout out to everybody who sent comments in last week. Keep them coming. InDeepWithDan.com. Click the comments button at the top of the page. Hey, please share the show with your friends. I'm not sure I mentioned this enough. There are a few things for me than seeing the subscriber numbers increase that really give me a high. So it lets me know when I'm doing something right. I very much appreciate it. Shoot me an email at indeepwithdan@gmail.com. I love those. Until next week, my Deeplies, work hard, play hard, go listen to some podcasts, go play some video games, go listen to some awesome music. Heck, if you like all or any of those things, go listen to a Band of Gamers podcast and listen to Joel, Shane, and Karl educate you on where the fun is. And hey, times are crazy. People on the right think starving refugees are coming for their babies. People on the left think everyone else is a racist, non-loving robot. And here I am, stuck in the middle with you. Cue that old song. Yeah, I don't know. Just go vote tomorrow, okay? No excuses. Educate yourself on what's real and what's the pablum you're willingly or otherwise consuming. Pick someone with integrity. No BS. Yeah, you're going to have to go in deep a bit. Just today. Tomorrow night, turn it all off if you want. Frankly, I probably will. I've got an old TV to hang on the wall, and I'll probably relax with some Haunting of Hill House or Jack Ryan or some escapist stuff. But in the meantime, do your homework, go read the sites, do the stuff you have to do, and then go vote, okay? Vote your conscience, vote your brain, turn on both of them, all right? So, I hope you have a great week. I have Monday off, so I'm going to be in my pajamas and waiting for a dude to show up with a new mattress. That's not a recreational activity. We actually bought one. So thanks for listening. Talk at you again on Monday when we will again go in deep.